There we go. Howdy, howdy. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, beautiful people. Welcome to one more session of Smartlead's office hours. My name is Akash, and I'm your customer success manager here at Smartlead. Most of y'all are here. You know the drill. Before we kickstart, drop on the comments where you're from and the temperature in the city you're currently at. We'd love to know. Toronto minus 10. I'm kind of comfortable right now.
Oh,
Southern part of India. So it's warm. Argentina, 18 degrees. Bangladesh 29, Sydney 12. There you go. Keep it coming. Philippines is at 28, Austin 74, Madrid 20. I do know it's hot, Ashish. It's a global audience. We have people from everywhere. Love it. All right, good to go. If we can kickstart, today's guest is none other than our OG Jesse Oullette. Jesse is the founder of Lead Magic, and over the years, Jesse's insights and predictions has helped a lot of cold emailers, including me, get the best out of a cold emailing experience. Most of y'all know Jesse. He's been with us on multiple insightful sessions. But Jesse, sir, I hand over the mic to you. A quick round of introduction would be lovely.
yeah, thanks, man. I really love being here. Smartlead's been an awesome partner for us, Lead Magic, and even also just personally, been really great advising V. But love to be here. Looking forward to this conversation. I could talk about this thing for hours, so that's what's so great about it.
Absolutely.
And I can wait around and answer questions for hours on it too. It's the best.
Absolutely. And today, kind of, we're going specific into one vertical which you own, which is email validation 101, right? Because cold emailing
Yes.
is bits and pieces of everything. And this is something we wanted to cover in today's sessions, Jesse. So without further ado, the first topic I had was why bad lists are silently killing your cold email campaigns, right? So
Yeah.
based on your experience,
It's
from what you've seen and from what you've seen in Lead Magic, what are your observations? What are your thoughts here, sir?
Well, I think what I want to do here, and it's not usually my I want to just kind of zoom in a little bit on the problem that I think people have. And I think this is very important to understand the the sort of the logistics of email validation. Because there's a lot of noise in the market around this, and not everybody really, and I'm going to kind of go through it. So let's just talk about what happens when you want to validate an email. And when I talk about validation, I'm talking about a zero or a one, right?
Right.
And you can either get the answer back or not get the answer back from the email provider. So what happens is you send a network to do an email validation. This is how the secret sauce works. It's
Right.
pretty obvious. It's been around for about, I don't know, 15, 20 years, the technology to do it. It's getting a little harder, but let's talk about that. Basically, you're sending you look up what MX record the person has, and then you send that MX record at there. You say, hey, is this person at this inbox? Does this email address exist?
Right.
And of course, they give you back a response. And what happens is you have Google or Office. They have there's one server that you kind of hit, well, like a few servers, but you hit it and then you say, yes, is this a real email or not? Then you have these ones, which are the security ones, other segs, like whatever. And what happens is it comes back as a zero or a one, yes or no. And what you're doing is you're going to the step right before you send the email. You're actually not sending an email. You're verifying that if you did send an email, it would make it. And this obviously creates a whole other world for people that do this, that run this service for people. We are we see it all the day.
Right.
But basically what the goal, they don't want to always tell you the right information, right? They do have to do it, but they have to make it a little tricky to do because they don't want somebody trying every single combination of every single email of every single thing to find every single email, right?
True.
Now, one other little part of this, and this is what it comes back. It will return back one of these kind of, for all intents and purposes, it'll return back something like this, right?
Right.
A valid email, an invalid, catch all, which is also sometimes called accept all, and And then sometimes it doesn't even give a response. So when you see unknown, usually it means it hit the timeout,
Right.
right? Or and what the problem is every single email validation tool has a different like classification for all of these statuses. Now, what I'm talking about is just what the server came back with.
Right.
Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. There's another thing that kind of happens where, and you're like, well, why would one service provider give you one email validation and the other one give you another one? It all comes down to this thing called caching. What they're doing is if they've already gone there and they already saw the result, they will cache the data sometimes. Some of the providers do this. I've checked every one of them. I know who does. You know, we've done our own analysis. That's why we built a disruptive one in the market, and that's why we did that. But obviously, you know, if you're using the Smartlead one, it's awesome too. I would definitely do this before you validate an email, and it's just something you want to do. Now, let me just get into I'll pause right there. We'll go into questions after, but let me just go through this next part. But I just wanted to see if this makes sense for validation, and then I'll go to the next part.
Absolutely. It does. And I
Okay,
don't see any questions on the chat
perfect.
as well. So we're good to go, JC.
Keep the questions coming. We'll get them at the end. But here's what we're looking at. So it's going to be one of these statuses, right? And this is on a network call. What you're doing is it'd be the same thing if you went to your command line prompt
Mm-hmm.
and you typed in, you know, you ran a telnet into the server, right? Which is a network traffic. You would ran that, and then you started issuing commands on it. Now your ISP has most likely blocked port 25, which is the port you need for the most accuracy on this right now. And that's kind of like what a lot of people in email talk about. But what's going to happen is it's going to come back as one of these. And I want to say, like, if it comes back with this, easy, it's done. If it comes back with this, easy, it's done. Right? Sometimes it'll come back with like no mailbox. It'll come back with other information in here that sometimes the provider gives you or not, the validation provider gives you or not. And then here, we'll talk about this one. But if you did all of these, you probably get like 25%, you know, you might get 25% here, 25% there. There's another 25% here. And then maybe maybe it's a little less in the unknowns. But where there's an ambiguity of like, what do we do would be here only, right? I'll go through this in a second, but there really, and if you really break it down, there probably shouldn't be any discrepancy on any of the providers on what's a valid and what's an invalid.
Right.
Now, the reason I say that is because there's a lot of these like people out there they're kind of doling out this triple validated blah 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 stuff, and it's like, all right, well, that doesn't really make sense if if you are truly validating it. Now, I will tell you where it could matter, but it probably doesn't for a lot of that is when they do validate the email, when you're sending this much network traffic, sometimes you get gray listed. And what that means is you got shadow banned basically when you're doing the validation. And it tends to happen more often on the security provider ones, the ones that are like Mimecast, Proofpoint, security, right?
Right.
That group, they can detect a lot of this email validation traffic. They're very good at it. They make it very hard to get through, and they
Right.
do a lot there. So that's where it comes back sometimes a little bit fuzzy. A lot of the times it comes back unknown, or if the server provider, if the person's provider, so if you work at uber.com, I think they're a catch-all. Everybody at the ISP is a catch-all.
Right.
And usually vendors don't charge you for that, right? Unless they have another status. This probably is where a lot of the confusion is, right? For bounces. So if you bounce on a valid email and what I want to try to do is mitigate a lot of people's problems. They're like, hey, is my email validation tool broken? Well, what I usually do, and I would do this, I'm like encouraging you, like no matter what tool you run, if you get some bounces on valid emails, go use the other tools. Go run a test with like 5 tools. Just pick like I'm even saying that like I know I run a service that does this, but go pick 5 other tools and try it out right away and see what they come back with.
Got it.
If it's valid, you probably got blocked for another reason. You
Right.
probably had copy issues. That domain's a little toast. This is actually a great way to detect if a domain starts to decline. There's a code that you get in Smartlead, and this is really helpful, and I'm sure they're building around this technology. But in there you can see what the code is. And some of the codes, they try to mislead you a little bit sometimes, not smartly, but the server misleads you. So if your email is a valid or an invalid, and then you get what you want to look at and it bounces, you know if it's an invalid, why it bounced, because you shouldn't have emailed it. If it's a valid email and you emailed it, and if it says valid, now this is where I really want you to hone in on. Check the valids that bounce
Right.
because they shouldn't bounce, right? That's really where you got to kind of check because there's a lot of hype or marketing hype around this. What people do is they blend. So depending on what list you choose, right,
Right.
of your own list, there's a 0 or 1 on every one of these statuses of like what it is, right? I guess with the exception of this one, but like there's definitely it's either an accept all, invalid, or valid. Right. And what you really have to do is concentrate on the valids that bounced. That means you got to go back and dig in a little bit. You got to look at like if you're getting a bounce rate and you want to get it down, this is how you clean it up. Find all your valids that bounced. Take those and look at the code that says why it bounced. That will really help you because you can see, hey, is this an abuse code or whatever? Now, they're a little cryptic, but usually you can tell if it's a bounce, it's going to be in that there's like 200 and 500, and you can look up what each one of them means. Use ChatGPT just to figure out, like, hey, is this an abuse code? Could this be an abuse code on this? Like, if it's abuse, it just means somebody reported you as spam so many times that like you're starting to have domain reputation issues. This is actually, and I'm sure this will be in every product after this webinar, but this is actually the best way to figure out if a domain is burned. If you start seeing valid emails that you've tested with a reliable email validation tool, if you start seeing them show up as bounced and they're in that like 500, that means you probably have a burned domain. So this is something to add in your findings. And then invalid, if you email those in the first place, you probably shouldn't have. Those will bounce. This right here is a contest. This is a game. Catch all. I'm going to tell you, wait till the end. Don't do this before this email will go 100x more chance of reply on a valid email.
Right.
This is a game. Basically, what you have to do as a provider, you have to have other sources of data that tell you it's a valid email. Because there's no way to generate an actual result from here. You have to tell, there's ways to do it. There's 100 different ways to do it. All of them are some reliable. The most reliable, and it's not even my tool, but I don't really, it's my buddy's tool, but the most reliable is, I guess you could say it's probably just emailing it, right? So if you want to really know, just email the free thing and you'll know. But if it's an accept all, the ones you got to be very careful of. So like I said, the two that are going to matter, then we'll go to like some of the questions. Valids that bounce, no bueno, get rid of those. You got to figure out why that provider bounced it, right? Now, if you do scale with them, they're going to bounce some. Like I have people come in the chat sometimes and I'm like, listen, man, we're doing 200 million email validations like in a month. Do you think we're going to get like we're going to have network challenges? There's like a million things that can happen. But if it's on a scale, if like you start to see like 5%, you got to change providers, even if it's our company, right? Like I'm telling you right now, changing. Or even Smartlead or anybody, right? So on catch-all, this one you got to look at. So if they scored a valid, you should find you could be using 2 email validation tools because a lot of the catch-all providers, and we have our own validation for catch-alls, a lot of the catch-all providers charge different prices for their catch-all emails. Some don't charge it for catch-all because they don't give you any insights they shouldn't charge. And some of them charge, but based on their own finding. Now, what you got to be careful of is, and then this will be the last thing I'll talk about here, the cost of an email validation versus the cost of finding an email. So that's what the service costs when we sell it for one email validation or whatever, right? Or like a lot of them are in there. Some of them are actually here, right? They're at that point. Now, finding an email, or like they're at this point maybe. Finding an email is this. So validating an email is this. This is what a lot of people miss, and it's probably not marketed very well, myself included, or anybody that's marketed it. But like the cost of finding an email is Some providers are at like 2, some are, whatever. But you have to understand this number and this number. If you are looking at these two numbers, this is a very big gap. And if you understand math, not that a lot of people here are lead gen, but if you took any math, like this is a very big difference right here. So keep an eye on that. It's also a way to cut down some of your costs. Some of you guys are frugal. I understand, and I'm trying to help you. If you can figure out how to get these emails for a little bit lower, this is one of the ways to do it. And this doesn't help me or serve me well, but hey, I'm looking to get back to people here. So this is part of if you're able to check the emails and validate them and keep this cost low, you can sometimes save money there. But I'll pause there. Hopefully that was a good kind of starter for this conversation, but we'll go into the details if anybody has any questions.
Absolutely. And picking one from the chat, Jesse, taking a step back, you spoke about gray listing, right? So could you just throw some light on how gray listing actually works?
Yeah. Yep. So gray listing, okay, so let me show you what gray listing, what happens. So like I actually when I get into like I was in a little bit of an argument with a competitor
right
a couple weeks ago he's in my group, and we're competitive people. He's a good dude. He runs a good service, but we marked one. There was a guy who had a question about an email. It was a specific email actually, and we marked it invalid. He marked it valid.
Right.
And I said, "Uh-oh, this is going to be fun." So I'm immediately texting my guy on my email side, a chief architect guy that I work with a lot, and I'm like, "Dude, what do we do here? Did we get this one right? Is this a winner or is this a loser?" Right? So I texted, we're doing it. I was like, "Why is this? We should have marked this valid." And then I started looking. I was like, "Oh wait, there's no mail server there. The mail server was wrong. So we actually marked it right." So like, what gray listing is though, gray listing is when you go there and they've sort of like figured out. It happens on Mimecast the most, I've found. But what gray listing is when you're doing these validations, they obviously see what you're doing.
Right.
And they're like, "Yeah, we're just going to give him back kind of like a soft answer that doesn't really answer the question." And you don't really notice because they give you like the same sort of response.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is based on the it's based on the email validation tool. So if they flag my IP addresses, I have to rotate those IPs to do it, right? So you have to rotate your IP addresses a lot when you're doing validation, and to store, this is not hard to do when you're like, one person, but like just checking your own emails. But when you're a provider and you have to go rotate these, I mean, the cost is enormous, right? Like this is where, everything else is free on this process. Now, if you're charging 0.01 cents, you're making a lot of money. If you're somebody that's charging bulk pricing and everything like that, I mean, you could literally resell our service as a really good or any of these things. And you can rely on the Smartlead data too. I've tested their validation. It works awesome. So like, and it's just easy because it's integrated into the platform. But here's what I would say is like, the gray listing is just like a way to throw you off. I would akin it. It's basically the same thing as shadow banning on social media.
Right.
It's like they're going to give you a BS answer if you come in, and you're not going to know that it's like kind of a BS answer until you know. So there are moments where we have gray listing, but we have to rotate it fast. And the faster you rotate that, the better. But like you don't really know. So this is the problem. This is actually where you might have difference in providers.
Mm-hmm.
There can be some gray listing depending on how good that provider is. Now I've gone through all the providers and I found out who has the best setup, the best MX, the best backups. You actually have to send 2 validations is the real weird part. You can't just send 1. You have to send 2 because you have to check if you're being gray listed, basically. So you have to send something that has, won't give away all the secret sauce here, but like that's how it works. You send a couple of requests.
Noted. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Because if you send one that is not real and they tell you that it is, then you're like, you guys are gray listing me.
Noted. That's a sign. Got it.
That's the trick.
Picking up one more from the chat, what specific bounce codes should we check if there's a domain issue? Ideally, Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Smartlead shows you sender bounces. Anything that starts with the 5 series could be a permanent failure, which could ideally mean something is wrong with the domains. So, Kashish, I hope that
Let me see if I can find it here. That's a good question. That's a very good question. And I won't do this anymore, but I did get into like I've been known to get into a few chatbot support issues myself here. Hold on, I pulled yeah, I actually have basically okay, I'm gonna show you what you would do in Smartlead. What you would do in Smartlead is the folder is called the what's it called? The
Track replies.
yeah, untracked replies. Yeah, that's it. Yep. So you go into there and what you want to look at, I'm going to show you like an example here. Let me I just have to move one thing on this. But if you're looking at it from the Smart Lead perspective, now I know this is going to be annoying because we're going to go into the spreadsheet, but it's sort of, I would have probably made it a little easier to read. You could have something like this. Let me just, yeah. So let's just say you had this data right here, right? This would tell you, okay, the send time, like what time did we send it or whatever. Now, this right here is very, okay, so this reply message is what you're going to see. So if you really want to know, you'll see right here, these are the codes that you're going to get, right?
Right.
Now, what I would do first, every time I always tell people what they need to do is they need to go in and validate their emails with other providers or whatever.
Right.
It's possible your provider got it wrong. And you know what? If you go after the provider, you're kind of silly too, because here's the thing. They're not charging you enough money to probably take your call or your, I mean, they might like you in general, but most of these there's so many email validation tools in the market that none of them are charging enough to like support the people that are doing them. So they're not going to explain this to you. And probably they don't have anybody answering support that actually understands these concepts. So I wouldn't even waste your time there. You're kind of wasting your time. And I know that's kind of weird to say, but like it's true. You're not really going to get much there, right? Because they probably don't know. But the reality is if you look at these codes, these are the codes. So it's pretty obvious what happened. Now, the ones that are a little more vague, your message has been blocked. See technical details below. Learn more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Third party, that's what happened here. So you got to watch out for certain ones in here where, and what you would do is you would run this against maybe a waterfall. I wouldn't waterfall though. I would just go run it. It doesn't cost enough. So have like 5 providers, like just to check these one off.
Right.
And what I would look at is the code that came in. If it's in that like 200 range, it bounced. If it's in the like 500, it's like there's certain codes. Like you got to go map the code. There's a website that has like what each code is. And if you just look like this is 521, off the top of my head, I can't really remember which ones are. I just use, I literally just shove this into ChatGPT and I just say which one of these could be bounce codes, abuse codes.
Right.
And it works. It tells you that. And this is sort of an angle. But basically, what you're able to do here is you're able to say, like, okay, delivery has failed. Why? You don't know. Like, if they tell you the inbox doesn't exist, those are the ones you want to be careful of.
Yes.
Right. Now, the other piece of data you could probably use in this is what domain sent it. And if you saw a domain with a higher probability of bounces, that could be something.
Understood.
However, I would also say one other thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Careful on this number because, okay, so bounces are bad. No question. Especially the ones that are like real bounces the abuse ones aren't really as bad. And I know people are like, what do you mean the abuse bounce? Not as bad because they didn't really like bounce you that hard. So and then there's more of like a softer bounce, right?
Right.
But if they put you like this, the ones that hurt are ones like this, address not found. They're sending that to every single MX provider when you hit the wrong one. This is a slip. So this one probably showed up in the email validation tool as it probably showed up as a status that was like no inbox, which means don't email it. And then you probably emailed it anyways. Like you got to look at your process and understand where these are coming. And I think in Smartlead you could just export the CSV file and you could look at these if you have a problem. And that's the point of this this show here. That's what we're trying to do.
Right.
Obviously, there's some analytics that they're rolling out on this, but I'm just saying, like in general, you can kind of see what's going on here. And a lot of the times, I'm going to say it's going to go back to your copy, and that you can have higher, these bounce rates tend to go up as your copy sucks or your targeting sucks and your offer sucks because you're going to start to see more. But there are some that you should be concerned about. It's valid emails, and this is what I would look for. There are tools out there that find emails. I'm
Mhm.
just going to say that. And what they do is they will send out, they'll tell you it's valid. What they're trying to do is bait you into sending to all of their catch-all valid ones. So you blend it together with valid. That is the that is the issue. So that's what I'm trying to say is like you got to be careful when a vendor tells you it's valid.
Right.
It's another level of scrutiny that you have to put on it. If it's, and remember, it might be an inbox that you can't check. If it's an accept all inbox at that domain, you cannot check that validation. But you got to use alternative methods. I'm saying you can check it, but you got to use, I know there's going to be 97 SAS tools presented for catch-all verification, but that isn't a 0 or 1, right? The one that really matters is the MX. Now, the methods that people use to go find those catch-alls, there's all kinds of different methods. They're better off not talking about those methods because, and people should use those methods, but they're better off not talking about them because they get into this like very, very gray area. And it's not that and the ones that are doing catch-all, they're emailing them. That's another area, right? Like you got to you got to start building a very gray system. And I think that's, rely on, find out who's the most accurate. Try out the catch-all providers, but make sure you isolate the catch-alls versus the valid and invalid inboxes.
Note.
Hopefully that answered the question on Grant.
Uh,
Yeah.
it did. It did. It kind of was more informative. But picking one more from the chat. So, are we potentially losing important contacts just because they all fall under catch-all domains, even though they might actually be the right people to reach out to?
So you definitely are. What I would do is, like I said, you want to go through and you want to you want to find out what are the mail valids and invalids, right? First, you want to start with your valids. You're going to get a higher reply rate. Now, if you're like, excuse me, I'm going to go get back those catch-alls. What you have to do, and remember, it's a domain level control. Like what you got to do is these are going to give you the same result they should on any provider. These aren't going to change. So let's say that's like 70% of the emails that you have go here. The rest of them go here. So you could try to validate again. What you could do is you could increase, some vendors let you increase the timeout. Some vendors know what the timeout should be, and some vendors don't know and they just do it. But you can increase the timeout to get a more of these out of that bucket. But the ones that we're talking about now are these catch-alls. And this is very annoying. So what's annoying about catch-alls is all the providers that are like the big ones, like the Zoom, the Apollo, all of the big ones, they all give you these because they have to. Because literally the email list would be like half as much if they didn't give you these.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. You have to put some scrutiny on this. And I don't want to go into all the methods to doing this. There's about 75 methods to go and validate these types of emails. And each one of the methods, I mean, the simplest method is to find out what the most likely email is. Now, this one is also the most risky.
Right.
You got to be super careful with this one, right? If it's a big company and you try to do this one, you could be at a lot of hurt because if you start bouncing here, it's probably not going to hurt as bad as a full-on valid bounce, but it will hurt, especially if that, there's a lot of unknowns when you're doing this. What that means is like, we don't really know the impact of a bounce when it comes to here. I know people they're going to say, well, you don't see it it's not the same bounce code. It's not going to hurt you as bad at the MX level. That's not necessarily true because the debate there is that you don't really have the algorithm. And if it's the same provider that's getting you that, if you're emailing a Microsoft Office and they catch all, and then they figure out that they shouldn't be allowing emails from you, they're obviously going to use that data on other customers. Like that's their whole value. That's like why Google and Microsoft decided to go get all of the. I mean, well, Microsoft already had it, but like Google and Microsoft want everybody's email is because now they can become the, and then there's also these like security gateway ones, but in here you got to just basically look at this list and you got to analyze it and say, hey, how do we get this back? One shout out, Scrubby's decent, but it's also like you do have to pay for Scrubby. Like it is on another level of expensive, right?
Okay.
And it's because they have to maintain a bunch of email addresses. And even that could be a little off too, right? But
True.
they basically have to email, you have to email everybody.
Hmm. Got
And
it.
it can take 2 days. That's why it can take a day. That's actually why you can't get it right away, and everybody wants it right away. So it can take a day or two. That's
Right.
why the Scrubby can't be automatic. They can't just give you the data.
Fair enough.
Everybody else is probably relying on a database or they're relying on other method. There's other methods. I don't want to go, I know every single method that there is, and I don't want to go into every one of them. And all of them have different levels of um, you know, gray areas in them. Let's put it that way. If you know, you know. So that's basically what that is.
Got it. And we have two more people asking the same question, which is we are using Million Verifier and only using good emails. And the bounce reason we're getting on such emails is the email address you entered could not be found or address not found.
Yep. So I did a test on this a couple days ago. Believe it or not, I still test this shit like you wouldn't believe. Yeah, so you're saying okay, so which result code is that person there's is what result code was it on Million Verifier?
If you can drop it on the chat, we'll pick it up, Kashish.
If you know what it is, so there's so if there's a result code that says no inbox, if it was that, you shouldn't have emailed it, hopefully, right? Um, that one is bad. Now, let me tell you, and this is why there's no perfect solution right there. Well, there are like I'm saying like you got to be careful because all of them do this some level. What they do is they try to these companies are sending right the infrastructure you need to validate it. I mean, Million Verifier is probably one of the biggest. They probably do a lot more than a lot, right? I know
Right.
we're doing a lot, but like these guys are doing a lot of validations, and what they're probably running into is you're probably on a 30-day cache. So what happens a lot of the times is they'll cache it. And generally they're going to be okay with that because if you think about it, like 30 days is probably enough to exit the data eviction, it's called. So
Right.
what happens is the data will get evicted after 30 days, but the 30 days, there's a gap between if that person leaves the company. And even that gap is sometimes not the problem. The problem is when the inbox ceases to exist. So that could be what it is. It could be they have a 30-day cache and you're hitting within that window.
Right.
And I don't know the exact cache they're all using. I've tested almost all of them to see what these caches are,
Mhm.
but I've also tested that a lot of the tools that people are using some of the same email validation tools, right? And this
Mhm.
is something to really be mindful of too. So, but the bottom line is you got to have a lot of backup systems when you run these systems. You got to have a lot of different ranges of IPs and things like that. And they become less accurate if there's anything weird it's a cat and mouse game, right? Like MX
Absolutely.
providers are playing games both ways.
Got it.
So it could be that. I wouldn't start emailing the email validation vendor. You're going to probably just run into blocks. I wouldn't even do that. Like they're going to probably, hopefully they ignore your message. I mean, you're not paying them enough to really like they can't really support a team of people who know what they're talking about at the price they're charging for these email validation tools, right? I mean, that's why I think the service from Smartlead is awesome because you got Smartlead there, right? Like, but it's just a matter of like they really just can't support this team, right? Like this team underneath, it's just not supported really. So you're not going to get much from them. You're not going to get hopefully, maybe you will. I don't know. You're probably not going to get the guy who's sitting there watching the network connection. It could tell you actually what happened in the logs. Like that's very unlikely you're going to get. So stop. That's my one message. Stop wasting your time trying to figure it out through their support team. Just go get one of the other 9 tools out there and try it again. That's what I would do.
Got it, Jesse. And coming back to a couple of questions that I had, what would be the economic impact of a bad validation, Jesse? Real world cost per valid email breakdown.
Yeah. I mean, it's you'd be other variables you would need, other controls you would need, to understand it.
Right.
Um, Obviously, like the bounces go. So the traditional MX record stuff, like the stuff that goes through the system, the stuff that gets validated, reported back through the system,
Mhm.
that stuff we know the impact of at some level because you get on these like public, PDLs and stuff like that. The thing is though, is that what's you got to be careful of is there's probably an unknown variable because there's nowhere that Microsoft, Google, Barracuda, Mimecast, none of these people are actually telling you what their model is for scoring email.
Got it.
So you have to take that into account. We don't anybody who like even if I sat here and told you, like a lot of people I hear like gurus on the internet, like internet gurus, they'll go out there and they'll tell you, "Oh yeah, here's what an impact of this is." And I'm like, "How would you know that? You don't know that at all. You're guessing." Now, we have to assume because they have data scientists that are building these models and they're sort of like trying to help users get a better experience in the inbox, and it makes sense.
Mhm.
But here's what it is. You don't really know the complete impact of it. Like you're never going to know unless you worked at Google or Microsoft or one of these providers. So we don't really know. I mean, we have to assume it's bad. We have to assume it's worse if you're emailing boxes that are not. And this is why you got to be super careful with this catch-all because nobody. I mean, look, I've tested it as much as anybody. I mean, Smartlead's testing it. Obviously, you got to test it.
True.
But that's the point is like if it's getting marked valid, and it's a catch-all, like and that's another thing. It shouldn't be marked that's another thing you got to be careful of. If it's a valid email and they're marking it catch-all, or if it's a catch-all email and they mark it valid, like they should tell you. I have a philosophical difference on this question because the there's three or four competitors and they think their message is simpler, but I actually think it's just scammy actually the way they're doing it. What they do is they just say it's valid. They're they're conflating two words together. I think you're better off knowing this. So like, but I get a ton of questions on it. Probably for marketing, I probably should just tell people it's valid the
Right.
same. But it's like I'd rather it's the really really top cold email people will want to know if it's a valid catch-all versus a valid. And this is just a philosophical difference because like I don't want to waste I personally I don't email anybody who's a catch-all. I
Got it.
don't even waste time.
Right.
I know that's like, well, what about all the context you're missing? I don't know. We'll figure out another way to get to them, but like, I'm not even going to waste my time. It's just not worth it. Too much maintenance, too many domains to manage. Like I just don't even, it's just not even worth hitting.
True.
I don't even email catch all emails. I just don't. I know people do it. I'm not saying it's a terrible idea. It depends on how big the market is. Go find more emails. I mean, if that's it depends what you're doing, right? If you only can sell to these people, maybe you have to, but you got to do it a little bit differently. You're going to have to use more inboxes, more domains, because it's going to be less accurate at the start. And I don't care if they have a catch-all guarantee, right? Like that doesn't even matter because you're going to get into this situation where are you going to go get a 1 penny refund from the 2 penny refund from the provider over a catch-all email? I mean, come on, like
True.
what's the refund for?
Doesn't make sense. Yeah.
You should be paying them on
That
some
makes sense.
level.
Aligned. Aligned, Jesse.
I don't know.
One more thing
Yeah,
I want to
so
understand is,
yeah, that
yeah, but good. This makes a lot of sense. And one more thing that I wanted to understand is we always highlight the importance of list validation, but kind of people also have this question as to if they can measure the ROI of their investments on list building. So, do you think is there a way to do that, Jesse?
yeah, I mean, when you say list building, I'm assuming what you mean by that is the science of like which providers you're using, how you're getting the list, how you're acquiring.
Yes.
I mean, I think you have to put that into a cost per contact formula. I think that'd be the only way to do it. If I had to do it, right? I don't. But and then I would have to say like, the problem is the controls are different, right? Like you're like, well, this is one offer, this is another. I almost think you just have to make the process first, right? And
Mhm.
that process, what you're trying to do is spend the least amount of money and get the highest quality that you possibly can.
Right.
And yeah, maybe if it's a 5% difference, but like you want to be able to do that. And I also think you want to be able to automate it all.
Got it. Like,
Like if you're doing any list building and you're like doing anything manual at this point, like what are you even really doing? Like it could you can load the entire thing. And when we were more of an agency versus the SaaS product that we have, when we were doing that, like we didn't load like it did not take me 1 minute to load the entire list. And like you could type in like 10 domains, we'd have the lookalike domains, we'd have the lookalike audience, we'd have the roles, everything, and all of that would just go right into the Smartlead. And it would validate them on the way, everything was good, and we had that whole pipeline. Like you got to build that if you really want to like build that, right? Start today, go map out exactly what you're doing. And by the way, that's how our SaaS product became because I said, why don't we just do this for people anyways, because they're going to need it. And then, hey, people came in first 9 months and and use our email finder to find 20,000 lists and, a couple 100 million API calls. So it's just like, you could take your process and just really make it efficient there. I think the ROI is going to come from how to keep your costs down. I wouldn't sign annual contracts with data providers. I
right,
would avoid that
right,
because this exposes why you don't want that because
right.
the quality of these providers tends to go down as
Absolutely.
they make more money.
Noted.
I
Perfectly.
hate it. I'd love to charge an annual more. Like we do have annuals, but I try to make it. I almost want people to avoid them. I mean, it puts a lot more skin in the game for me to like make sure I have the highest quality,
Right,
But like I throw us, I get waterfalled all the time. Like there's always some new like there's always the problem I'm having right now is there's a lot of these people who don't care about like FTC and they're getting paid like $750 to talk about an email finder being better than another one. So I have a hard time against that group, and it's like I have to keep it. I have to be very vigilant on those on people who are like getting paid. Like you'll see like some of these washed up like RevOps people taking
right,
money from some of these email finders and you're like, what is going on here? This is not even accurate. And so then I got to go in and put the case out there for greatness. And that's about all I have to do. So it's like one of those things.
right. Picking one from the chat, JC. It's from Andy. I've noticed that Apollo's verified email are not great, sometimes losing up to 1/3 of emails. So if I end up always running those through a third party verifier, curious if anyone has had this experience. So use Lead Magic or use
Yeah.
Smart Email.
They're about they're so the verified ones are ones that they verified at one point, but doesn't mean they verified it. So we've looked at the Apollo stuff. So they've got they have they're great for kind of like your initial list building. Very good on the search part. It's a little bit easier to use than Sales Navigator, right?
Right,
Which is the other way people usually do it. Is when I say easier to use, it's like you're probably not getting as high quality because there's probably like a lag between when they can update it and obviously they got thrown off LinkedIn or their company who did. But um the bottom line there though is yeah, you're gonna lose some of them, but I wouldn't worry about it, right? Like you got to go check the list, get the list maximized, figure out your alternative method to do that because you're going to need valid and just completely avoid any provider who is telling you that a valid catch-all and a valid is like it doesn't make sense to get those two things blended into one, right? Like why would you want that? Like that can't be good for you because if they blend it, they might give you a false sense of happiness right away, but it doesn't make sense to blend those two together. You have to know if it's a catch-all email, it's going to be every single email at that domain. Like I have a list of every domain that's a catch-all. And if
right,
it's ever one of those domains, I don't even have to check. I'm not going to check the network call there. I have to check other ways to make sure that that's a real email. And those ways are less accurate than checking well, I guess you'd say you could probably make an argument that there are some ways that you could check that would be probably equally accurate, but I don't know more, probably not, but equally. But that is a little trickier.
got it.
So, anyways, yeah, the answer, yeah, you're going to lose probably about half your list every time. It sucks.
Got it. And that's all the questions I had, Jesse. We'll probably
Yeah.
time for the end of the session as well. But something that I'd also love to know from your end is what are we cooking in Lead Magic? We'd love to know, all of us are here. So if you have anything to share with us about
Yeah.
how you guys are building that.
Yeah, the biggest thing I'm trying to do, since I love, I'm working on the end-to-end process right now on getting a list into Smartlead. So what I plan on having really quickly is I'll have a chatbot that basically you just come in and it'll have, you just type in like a lookalike or you type in whatever, and then it'll just all come in and it'll say, here's all your valids. Here, it'll find all the emails. Here's all your valids. Here's your invalids. Here's your catch-alls.
Okay.
We're gonna go with put it based on your default settings. We're gonna do valid, and we're gonna build the copy like this for you, and all of this, and then it's just gonna put it. And then if you say yes, you just push it. It'll just push into Smartlead, and that's we've really only integrated tightly with one vendor in Smartlead because we use Smartlead. We love it. It's a great product, and that's basically what we do. So I'd say it's a more interactive experience on that. And also chain enrichment. So that's another thing that we've been doing a lot of is like they want like email found, phone number found. Then they want to add on a line of OpenAI, to pull up to build the email. So we'll do that. So building the emails and then also loading the lists are the two areas that we're going to be focused on this year.
Got it. Thank you so much, Jesse. Glad to know. And yeah, that would be wild, Frank. I was thinking the same. But yep, the floor is open for questions. These are all the questions I had. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate the call.
Awesome. You know the drill. React on the center. Raise your hand. Turn on your video. I'll spotlight you, and you can ask your questions directly to Jesse. Again, React icon in the center. Raise your hand. Turn on your video, and I'll spotlight you if you have any questions. Go for it, peeps.
Frank.
Frank. There you go, sir.
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. How you doing?
Okay. Sweet. Great. Great. How about you?
Good, man.
Good. Awesome. Okay, so here's a question. Um, Using private infrastructure, right? Like something like Mailreef or InfraForge or something like that, right? You have multiple domains and mailboxes. How would you actually get to a place where you're burning the IP and need to rotate it? And what are the best practices around using those?
Um, so I guess the answer is unfortunately they have to kind of control it. So when they know, they know. Most of the providers, at least when I've done my audit, most of them are using, there's like 3 or 4 different providers. They're all pretty much using the same ones. So they're working, if they're selling it, you got to think about the pricing model. Like if they're selling it to you for like $200 to $300 a month or even 500 or whatever, it's probably not enough for them to go like get a block of IP addresses and really, really do it. However, I do hear I do like the founders of those companies. I think they're rotating them. It's probably like a daily thing they check. They just check the feedback loop and they do it. How do you know? Well, what happens is on their systems, they can probably, because they're using they're using servers. They're using technology that allows them to get a feed. They call it a feedback loop, and they can kind of see like how many reported as spam. They can see that a little bit more. I mean, if you get a few of those, like they kind of know, right? And they probably have a bar, right? They probably don't. I mean, it's not beneficial for them to do it. Actually, this is the problem, and this is why you got to be careful. Like it actually doesn't help them to do it. I mean, they want you to get in the inbox, but at the same time, if their cost structure goes ridiculously out of control because they have to rotate they actually have to be very careful about who they take on for customers, unless they don't care about your delivery. So
Mm,
I think if you can get on these service, the problem is some of these ones are taking on a lot, right? They're taking on a lot of customers, and you're only going to be as good as the other customers are if unless they isolate you very like cleanly isolate you. And remember, like isolation's tricky to do, right? Like you have org like isolation, you have IP
mm,
isolation. Like there's a lot of stuff they have to think about.
mm,
And it's like anything in life, where you're spending money, like they're going to want their people who spend the most money to be in the best IP pool. They know where their ranges are. They know
mm,
where good stuff is. They pretty much know a lot about your delivery. And
mm,
if they work with their customers to get better offers out there, better emails, better targeting, if they see but if they don't really care about that, that could be a red flag to you. It might be worth you asking some of these questions as you're signing up for them. It's like,
mm,
hey, how are you guys doing this? Like, how do you guys work with us so you know how to get the right? Because remember, it's just a noisy neighbor, right? They're going to have to go if they're going to
Yeah.
they have to do the same problem. They have to go find a bunch of ways. It's not as hard as doing it with Google and Microsoft because
Hmm.
they don't have to rely on like Google and Microsoft. You have to go and register like just an inordinate amount of like domains and sign agreements and stuff like that.
Hmm.
They can kind of get away with a lot more. The volume is a little easier. But remember, they to isolate you, the volume is harder, right? In some ways, because they have to go
Hmm.
get IP addresses, they have to bring your own. I've thought about the perfect system. I haven't built it yet, and I'm not going to get into that space. I've thought about it. I did think about infrastructure, but I don't want to deal with it because I see how weird I get with people that are like, "Hey, my email validation is off," and then I go and I look at their copy and I look at their code. It's an abuse code, clearly like, I
Yeah.
had a guy the other day come in with a 0.87 bounce rate. I'm like, dude, come on, man. Like, give me a break here, you know? Like I'm doing
Yeah.
200
Yeah.
million
Yeah. Like
validation.
it's
You're talking about one bounce. I charged you 0.0005 cents for it. Like, give me a break, man. Like, but I think you got to try other providers, do that. Like,
Mhm.
I'd try them all, do like what Nick and Eric do, just kind of make friends with them and maybe talk about them on social media and figure out who the best ones are, like do some
Mhm.
comparisons.
Oh,
Taylor Heron does a good job with this stuff.
okay. That makes yes.
Does that
That
make
makes
sense?
sense. It does.
Yep.
Sorry. On that one, because I wanted to ask, would there be a benefit to adding smart senders on top of like another
Yeah, because
private
smart
mailbox?
senders. Now I know there's a lot of branding, so I talked to V about a lot of this stuff. Like a lot of this stuff him and I have talked about early on. I believe this is the one where we're basically sending with the IP. It's basically sending with an IP that is, but we're still sending through our own. It's not like it's not an SMTP. It's the smart sender is actually an IP that he's changing for you, so you have your own, right?
Mhm.
That smart
Yes.
servers, smart senders is
What's that?
actually
Oh, so sorry. Smart servers. Yeah, the
yeah.
one that
Oh, okay.
I'm
Server,
talking about,
yeah.
smart servers. Yeah, because it
Yep.
it felt like overkill to try to do something like private infrastructure and then on top of that do smart servers, right?
Yeah, this is the server one. Sorry, this is the one part I got to ask on the Smartlead side, Akash, and hopefully V
Absolutely.
isn't sitting here screaming at me. But like, the smart server one is the one that
Yeah, we're
it's not
playing
an
the smart lead team
SMTP.
over here.
Smart
Huh?
servers are basically the dedicated server assigned for your campaigns. Jesse, they can purchase a server from across the globe and they can assign it to their campaigns. And the emails going out from these mailboxes and these campaigns will be through this dedicated server with IPs.
Okay. Okay. So it's an SMT. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I haven't tried so I honestly, I usually just try to stay back on any of this because like, here's the problem. If I ever go one way and then there's like I'm very protective of my like email delivery background. And I'm like, if I ever go one way, like, I think it depends on how, and I'd ask Smartly the same questions, right? Like those would be the questions. I mean, I'm just trying to be honest here, right? Obviously V cares more about
Yeah,
this than
yeah.
anybody that I tell you that personal. But I also think what you got to do is test it. There's other ways to do things. It's a really good service they offer, but like I think if you have problems, the biggest thing about that Smartlead is they have like a really good support team. I've noticed. I don't have as good of a support as him because I don't. I just haven't really done that. But like you can get some really good support from Smartlead, and you can
Mm,
kind of understand what's going on if you have problems. But like what I would look at valid emails that are starting to bounce with abuse codes. I mean you
okay.
still have to look at you still have to look at the copy you're writing too, right? The offer and all
Yeah.
that. Like
Uh-huh.
it's on you and them. I mean, the one number that you don't have when you buy these services, and this is why I hate losing control of the situation. There's one thing you don't have, and you don't know who they're taking on if they're putting you in isolation. You don't know because I'm going to tell you, it's a lot less expensive to put you in less isolation. So if I put
Hmm.
you on your own block, your own system, like I'm talking like when I say isolation, I mean like even the billing is on another tenant. Like when it's at that level, it's a different game. But that also is like, and if you're only paying for $200 and they're telling you it's that, It's probably not that, right? You're probably paying, who knows what's going on, right? Like, but those are like that's like the information you got to understand is like, who are your neighbors, right? If you live
Mm-hmm.
on in this neighborhood, your house is worth this much. And then if you go to this neighborhood, it's worth this much, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way.
That
That's the
makes a
best
lot of
analogy.
sense.
Awesome.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You have to think about who else is sending in the same service providers
Mm.
and
Okay.
how much
Thank you.
isolation they want to give you, how important that email delivery is.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Thank you. That's super
Thank
helpful.
you, Doug. It's gonna be fun. Next is from Mike Da. Here you go, boss.
Hi, Jesse. I'm, going through this email challenges and understanding how all this emails works, all this thing works. And so now what I'm doing is I'm sending to the Google and to the Outlook that is verified, to get, results. But I heard that there is also a security providers like Mimecast, Barracuda, Proofpoint, etc., that you can't really validate, that you can't really know if you penetrate them or not. But some people claim that using Azure Outlook mailboxes, you could send to this secured uh, providers. So my question is, should I completely forget about emailing to secure providers, or should I buy and use expensive Azure Outlooks to send to them and see if there is a result? And my goal is just to bring leads and to bring interesting leads. So the goal is this.
Yeah. So okay, so good question. It depends. Like there's a lot in the middle of this question. When you say Azure, I'm assuming you mean the like SMTP Azure stuff. So first thing that happens when you do that, you're going to increase your cost of like infrastructure. Like now you need somebody who's a cloud, like you just became a different company, right? At that point. So you want to be careful there. I know there's Hypertide and Scaled Mail, and both great guys. I know Omar and Dean very well. They're both good dudes. You can talk to them, obviously. They're sort of in that Azure planet. I know there's Superwave, but I would probably call Dean or Omar. Just been my experience. Uh, Basically, if you're looking at those systems, they're sending from the a different tier of Microsoft a little bit. That's kind of like how that's apparently how, a lot of this stuff is like they might change tomorrow. That's the reality is like they don't really know what they're going to be doing tomorrow, right? Like there's a little bit of that in there because this stuff changes in like, and it's funny because I'm in a lot of these groups and we're all talking about these problems and some of the stuff we share publicly, some of the stuff we're sort of like not sharing. Like, we'll wait a few months while we're all having, the problem is you're on the bleeding edge of this. And this is where I think we became a technology company. Like we were an agency, marketing agency. And then we said, whoa, we're not even an agency anymore. We need to stop screwing around here. Like there are probably are advantages. So I'd say just go back to the rules of this. Like if you're on an IP range that's not if you have access to Azure, right, it's their premium kind of like cloud customers. If it's on a different range, you're probably not going to be lumped in with the amount of people that come on these free inboxes or the free or like the one thing you have to be really careful of right now is a lot of these like Google um, reseller programs. You got to be very careful with these ones right now because there's a lot of noise there that I've seen. This is like the one that I would say like you could destroy your delivery overnight. Don't go all in on any of these people or any of these methods at any time. Keep this stuff very, very, very volatile. In fact, you should. I mean, I like watching like Taylor has some good stuff out there. Like I like watching like the different. Try them all, but don't be annoying either. Like try it if it works, great. If it doesn't work and you go back and you start complaining and asking for a refund, you're just there's something weird about you. Like, I don't know, just don't waste your time with people like that. Like, just buy the service and try it and see if it works. I mean, the ones you can look at, I mean, talk to Omar, talk to Dean, both, I'm giving them a shout out. They're both good dudes. I can tell you right now, from a business perspective, they're both going to do the right thing. I've known them for a while, and they're in my group, and I talked to both of them independently, actually. So I know they're doing the right stuff. So definitely talk to them. But yeah, you can probably get an advantage with some Azure stuff, right? It's their premium tier. It also depends on how well you know how to set up these tools. These tools are it gets complicated, right? And then to put into Smartlead makes it, there's another level of complication there you're going to have to do. So you got to be careful. You don't want to go too far down the rat hole if you don't have technology people in your company, or if you don't trying to be a technology company like that. You got to be careful, because you can go so far down this path and get nothing in return, not even 1%. You just got to be careful and really define who your company is. That makes sense. Hopefully that answered the question.
So you can send visits to the security providers, yes, with this Azure, try
Well,
to penetrate.
I think you can. I think what I'm going to stop at. It always is going to be a depends answer. That's what I'm going to stop at, because there's going to be a lot of other factors there, right? Like, there's like the security providers are looking for every single way to help minimize the sort of back traffic in the inbox. So if I said if I told you that it was something, I would be completely lying to you. Like, there's no way for me to know. There's so many other variables. Like, if I had to start somewhere, that could be one place to start my journey. But like I said, if I didn't know much about it, like if I didn't have a Linux admin with me, which I have a really deep background in like Linux and system administration. If I didn't have like that background, I wouldn't even be screwing around with this stuff, right? Like, I would be like, all right, let me try a few of these vendors. If I get a good reply rate on a few campaigns, I'd probably stick with them, right? And I'd find other ones. I would definitely have 20% of my math would be going to another provider every month, right? To try. If this was my entire business, right? Like sending cold emails, then I would definitely be very, very, very rigid on this. But to say that it would get in 100% of the time, I would be lying to you. I would probably not, actually. The answer is no, probably. So I'd say you got to be careful on anything that says this will work in cold email is not going to work for, you know what I mean? You got to be careful. Who knows, right? Like, there's so many variables. Like, if you have the right IP range with Azure, there's people who are on there's different blocks in Azure. If you're talking about the one where you can just sign up, people know what Microsoft is, the one screening the emails. I mean, they know what tiers people have a hard time getting to, right? Like, if you're like one of their high-end senders, those people are probably going to have a much better delivery. But if you're like spending a few $1,000s with them a month, I mean, they have clients that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars a month, their cloud services. Like, you got to be careful. And millions, right? Like, you got to be like, they are spending a lot. I know, because I was in that space. So yeah, I would say probably no is the answer. I'd say it depends on other factors more than just being in Azure to send to security gateways. They're looking for any edge they can get.
Thank you, Jesse. Makita, I hope that answered your question, sir.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
We've come to the end of the session. No more questions, Jesse. Every session with you is always insightful as start taking notes and stuff. But thank you so much, Jesse. Thank you so much for making time as always.
Yeah.
And we're really excited about what's cooking in Lead Magic. Can't wait to get our hands on that.
Thank you.
And if that's it, we'll call it a day.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time. As always, 3 constant things in life: death, taxes, and office hours every Thursday. Cheers. Bye-bye.